Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about how to write a pitch for your novel. I think a very common experience for a lot of writers is feeling like writing the whole entire book was easier than writing a one-paragraph pitch. But writing a pitch actually doesn't have to be as scary or intimidating as it sounds. There are actually a few pretty straightforward steps and tips that you can implement to make writing a pitch a lot easier. Having a written pitch of your novel is really important. It's going to be a key component of a query letter. It may later evolve into your book's marketing blurb. And you also want to be able to pitch your book at moment's notice if it comes up. Even something that you can work on while you're writing the first draft, or even start working on before you've written the first draft as a story development tool. Step number 1, know what the pitch is for. You're going to want to tailor your pitch to the specific place and person that you're pitching it to. How formal should it be? Will you be pitching your book verbally, potentially at a conference, or will you be pitching over email? It's good to have a version of your pitch written and maybe even mildly memorized, just in case it comes up. Say an agent takes notice of you because of a short story you publish and emails you and asks you if you have a novel in the works. It's going to be pretty handy if you have a pitch ready to go. Or say you're going to a conference and you want to be able to pitch your novel to any agents or editors that you might meet. In that case, you maybe want to have it slightly memorized and maybe practice it a few times. If you're pitching in something like a pitch contest on Twitter, then your pitch needs to be compact enough to fit in a single tweet. If you're using your pitch for the pitch section of your query letter, then it needs to be short enough to fit within that query letter. I think the best approach is to have a general pitch written that you can then kind of mold and tailor based on the specific circumstance. Step number 2, start from a one-sentence pitch. I think it's really helpful to nail down a single sentence pitch or a logline, which we do have a full video on, which I'll leave a link to, before you expand that into a longer pitch. You may need your one sentence pitch for things like pitch contests, and it's also an important starting point for a longer pitch. Identify the most important quality of your character, the core conflict, the world, and hint at the larger arc of the narrative. If you can write a single sentence pitch, from here the rest is pretty easy because you can just kind of expand from there. It's whittling the story down that's difficult, not expanding the pitch. So start from the smallest pitch and you have the most difficult part out of the way. Step number 3, paint a portrait of your character and their struggle. You don't have much space in a pitch to go into all the minutiae of your character. A lot of that is just going to be left to the book. So you have to identify the most important details. These details could be a skill or job that they have, a source of internal conflict, an interesting personality trait, or ideally a combination of those things. So, for example, Joanne is a cunning criminal prodigy who runs a hair salon by day and pulls petty cons as a side job. This tells us a personality trait of Joanne, that she's cunning, and builds upon this by telling us her skill set. Not only is she a skilled hairdresser and businesswoman, but she's also a criminal mastermind. But it also tells us her source of internal conflict rather than making use of her skills as a criminal mastermind. She's running a hair salon, which we can infer doesn't really satisfy her dark but brilliant intellect. The promise of this story, just from this character introduction, is that she's going to make use of her brilliant criminal mastermind throughout the story, and it's probably going to go wrong. Just by setting up her character, there's already implications of what's going to go wrong. Step number 4, identify the inciting incident. The inciting incident is a key part of the story's structure, and so reflecting that in a pitch is key as well. I like to view a pitch as kind of a mini version of a novel structure. So after the initial setup and maybe backstory that shows us kind of the world before the story, we have the inciting incident, which will probably just be a single sentence, and then we hint at the further plot development. So here's a little example building upon the example about Joanne. When a mysterious but wealthy client, Sasha, catches Joanne trying to swindle her, rather than turn her in, she realizes Joanne's talents are exactly what she needs to steal back her family's fortune from her ex-husband. This builds on the sense of dissatisfaction that was hinted at earlier by showing us that when Joanne gets an opportunity to make use of her criminal mastermind, she's going to take it and it's going to launch her into a compelling story that makes use of her skills, and it's probably going to go wrong in some way. Step number 5, set up the conflict goals and stakes. The pitch shouldn't just be static. It shouldn't just be setting up the basic information. It should also be setting up the story's conflict and the stakes involved. These are really important elements of a story, and you want that reflected in a pitch. Remember, when industry professionals are reading your book, they don't just want to see that you have an interesting concept, but also that you have a well-written, well-structured story to back it up. And showing through your pitch that you have well-developed conflict, high stakes, and a well-structured story is part of that. You may not go into detail, but you can establish the rising stakes and the internal and external conflict. So let's build upon this example with a sentence that shows the escalating conflict and stakes. But Sasha's ex-husband is a more dangerous adversary than she initially let on, and as Joanne becomes embroiled in Sasha's family secrets, she learns that Sasha may not be so trustworthy herself. This establishes a lot of interpersonal conflict and shows rising stakes throughout the story. Step number 6 is to hint at the larger themes. You don't want to dedicate too much space in your pitch to the thematic development, but it is something you can hint at to show that this book is going to have thematic and emotional arcs that give it added layers of depth and meaning. End on a note that shows you have a cohesive narrative that has a larger theme or purpose to its story. You don't have to state it outright, but you might end by saying something like, the title is a story about how our own ambitions can become our greatest adversaries. Or you can hint at important thematic development by showing that the story will end on a crucial choice for the main character. So for example, in the end, Joanne will have to decide, is her brilliance worth the cost of destruction she leaves in her wake? So this shows that she's going to have to make a choice. There's going to be brewing internal conflict, and it's going to give meaning to the conclusion of the story. And finally, tip number 7, know what to leave out. This is probably the hardest part. It's why writing a pitch and keeping it short is so challenging, because we want to include so much more stuff. Your pitch doesn't have to showcase everything that's in the book. It just needs to show the most important elements and these general building blocks of the story. A lot of side little tangents or world building details or side relationships or subplots can be really interesting, but they're interesting in the story. They don't have to be in the pitch. Keep the pitch to these foundational elements. Don't let it get sidetracked. You don't have to establish everything. You don't have to establish every character, every side plot, and every idea that's developed in the story. Keep it focused and leave all that added depth to the novel itself. I'll leave a few videos in the description about different types of pitches. We have one on the difference between a summary versus a synopsis, one on writing a logline. So if you're writing a pitch, you can check out those resources below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.